Forget the wands and wizards you know. Forget the epic duels of good and evil. The real dark magic of the ancient world was intimate, it was personal, and it was terrifying. For the Greeks and Romans, for the Egyptians and Mesopotamians, cursing an enemy wasn't fantasy. It was a carefully planned ritual, a tangible act of aggression designed to ruin a life from the shadows. And the evidence they left behind is chilling. We're not talking about mythology. We're talking about real people, with real grievances, using real tools to exact their revenge. They etched their hatred onto lead, pierced it with iron nails, and buried it in the cold earth of a grave, hoping to enlist the restless dead in their sinister work. They sculpted dolls in the image of their victims, binding and torturing them, believing that as the effigy suffered, so too would the person. This wasn't make-believe. This was a dark art, practiced by the desperate, the vengeful, and the ambitious. Today, we open those ancient curse tablets. We uncover the secret rituals used to bind enemies and summon the gods of the underworld. This is the story of how ancient cultures really practiced dark magic. Section 1. Deconstructing the myth. The reality of ancient power. When we think of magic, we picture a century of cinema. We see wise, powerful figures wielding magic as a force for good, their power used to save the world. Even their dark counterparts operate on a grand scale, a threat to entire kingdoms. But this vision has almost nothing to do with how magic was practiced in the ancient world. For the average person in Athens or Rome, magic wasn't about saving the world. It was about solving a personal problem. It was a utility, a hidden weapon for anyone with the knowledge and the nerve to use it. There were no schools of wizardry and rarely any grand battles. Instead, ancient magic was gritty and clandestine. It was the desperate plea of a man whose cloak was stolen at the public baths. It was the cold calculation of a litigant in a court case, seeking to bind the tongue of his opponent. The Latin word for this was maleficium, which simply means evil doing. It wasn't about a philosophy of evil. It was about causing direct, tangible harm. In a world often without reliable legal recourse, what could you do? You turned to the gods, but not with a polite prayer. You turned to them with a demand, a contract written in anger. You asked them to become your enforcers. On one side, the myth of fantastical power. On the other, the reality of human desperation, jealousy, and a raw hunger for justice. Pliny the Elder, a Roman author, wrote in the 1st century AD that there is no one who does not fear to be spellbound by curse tablets. This wasn't a fear of a far-off dark lord. It was the fear of your neighbor, your business rival, or a spurned lover. The magic was real because the fear was real. Section 2. Defining our terms, the mechanics of ancient magic. To understand what comes next, we have to understand their world. The line we draw today between religion and magic was, for most in antiquity, incredibly blurry, but we can make a rough distinction. Religion was about supplication. You prayed to the gods and offered sacrifices, hoping for their favor. Magic, on the other hand, was about coercion. It was an attempt to bypass the pleasantries and directly manipulate supernatural forces. The practitioner wasn't just asking for help. They were using rituals and secret words to compel a god or spirit to do their bidding. Let's look at the terms. In Greece, a common curse was a katadesmos, a binding spell. The Latin equivalent is defixio, from the verb to nail down. Both terms get to the heart of what these curses did: bind, restrain, and incapacitate a victim. You weren't just wishing them ill, you were magically shackling their abilities. In Egypt, the concept of magic was Heka. It was believed to be a primordial force, the power the gods themselves used to create the universe. Heka was a neutral energy that could be wielded for any purpose, from healing the sick to annihilating an enemy. Across these cultures, the darker applications of magic fell into 3 main categories. First, and most common, were curses and binding spells. Inscribed on materials like lead or wax, these spells were used for a vast range of personal grievances. Second was necromancy, the practice of communicating with the dead. This was far more dangerous and taboo. Necromancers believed the souls of the dead, especially those who died violently, possessed a unique power that could be harnessed. Third was the invocation of spirits and demons. For ancient cultures, This involved summoning powerful entities that existed outside the main pantheon of gods. In Mesopotamia, for example, a rich tradition of demonology existed, with rituals designed to both summon and exorcise supernatural beings. These three pillars formed the foundation of dark magic. They were detailed in handbooks, the most famous of which is the Greek Magical Papyri, Papyri Graecae Magicae, or PGM. Discovered in Egypt, these texts are a grimoire of Greco-Roman magic, containing a dizzying array of spells for everything from finding a lover to cursing an enemy. The PGM is a testament to the potent and often terrifying brew of magical beliefs in this period. Section 3. The Curse Tablet. A personal weapon. Of all forms of dark magic, the Curse Tablet is the most personal and widespread. Over 1,600 have been discovered across the Greco-Roman world. They are, in essence, letters to the underworld. The process of making one was a deliberate ritual. First, you needed the right material. The most common choice was a thin sheet of lead. Lead was cheap, but also symbolic, a dark, heavy, and cold metal, properties the curser hoped to transfer to their victim. Next, you had to write the curse itself. The language was often brutal and explicit. A curse might target a person's body, their mind, or their very soul. To increase the spell's potency, the text was sometimes written backwards or in a spiral, and often included voces mystici, strange, untranslatable, mystical words believed to be the language of demons. The ritual continued. The lead tablet was often rolled or folded, and then, in an act of sympathetic magic, it was pierced with an iron nail. Just as the nail pierces the lead, the curse was meant to pierce and bind the victim. The final crucial step was deposition. The curse had to be delivered to the supernatural world. The most common locations were graves, especially the graves of those who had died prematurely or violently, as their spirits were thought to be restless and angry. Wells and sacred springs were another popular choice, seen as conduits to underworld deities. One of the most famous discoveries comes from Aquae Sulis, modern-day Bath in England, where around 130 curse tablets were found in a sacred spring. These weren't grand curses. They were overwhelmingly concerned with petty theft at the public baths. One tablet asks the goddess Sulis Minerva to not allow the thief to have sleep or health until the stolen goods are returned to her temple. These tablets are so significant, they are now recognized by UNESCO in its Memory of the World UK Register. To aid in these curses, practitioners sometimes used effigies, small dolls made of clay or wax. The most infamous example is the Louvre doll, a 4th century clay figurine of a woman, bound and pierced with 13 bronze needles. An accompanying spell commands a spirit to torment her until she submits to the man who commissioned the curse. This combination of tablet and violated effigy represents the pinnacle of personal, targeted dark magic. Section 4. Necromancy, Whispers from the Grave. If cursing was a common tool of dark magic, then necromancy was its most feared expression. It was a practice shrouded in terror, secretly pursued by those seeking forbidden knowledge. The term, from the Greek necromantia, means divination by means of the dead. The core belief was simple: the dead know more than the living. Contacting the dead was a perilous ritual. It was performed at night, in places that reeked of death, graveyards, tombs, or desolate crossroads. To protect themselves from angry spirits, necromancers would draw a magic circle on the ground. The circle was a sacred boundary, designed to keep the summoned entity from harming the summoner. The summoning itself was a multisensory assault, with long, droning incantations that called upon the rulers of the underworld, Hades, Persephone, and Hermes. One of the most vivid accounts appears in Homer's Odyssey. To consult the spirit of the prophet Tiresias, Odysseus digs a pit, pours libations, and sacrifices a ram and a black ewe, letting their blood drain into the pit. The scent of blood draws the spirits up from the underworld. While a story, it reflects the core components of necromantic belief: a specific location, libations, and the critical role of blood. There were two main forms of necromancy. The first was divination, summoning a spirit simply to ask it questions. The second, reanimation, was far more horrific: the attempt to temporarily return a spirit to its corpse, making the dead walk and talk. Necromancy was widely feared. Roman law took a hard line against practices that involved disturbing the dead. The fear was twofold: the religious terror of violating the sacred boundary between worlds, and the practical fear of what a necromancer could do with their power. The most famous historical account involves the death of Germanicus, the adopted son of Emperor Tiberius in 19 CE. After Germanicus fell mysteriously ill, he became convinced he was cursed. Tacitus, the historian, reports what investigators found in his villa. Explorations of the floor and walls brought to light the remains of human bodies, spells, curse tablets, leaden tablets engraved with the name Germanicus, charred and blood-smeared ashes, and other of the implements of witchcraft. Germanicus's rival was accused of using necromancy to assassinate him. Whether true or not, the story shows that even at the highest levels of Roman society, the fear of this dark art was profoundly real. Section 5. The unseen world, summoning spirits and demons. Beyond cursing and speaking with the dead lay an even more dangerous realm: the invocation of spirits and demons. In our modern mindset, demon conjures images of pure evil, but the ancient world had a more complex spiritual landscape. In Mesopotamia, the world was filled with supernatural beings that were not gods. Some were hostile, like the terrifying Lamashtu, a female demon who preyed on pregnant women and infants. On one side were exorcists, the Ashipu, who performed rituals to drive these forces away. On the other were sorcerers who sought to control them, perhaps invoking a demon to inflict suffering on an enemy. In the Greco-Roman world, demons were spirits lesser than gods, but more powerful than humans. A dark magician wouldn't pray to Zeus to harm their neighbor. They would perform a ritual to summon a kakodimon, or evil spirit, and unleash it upon their victim. The Greek Magical Papyri are filled with such spells, providing detailed instructions for conjuring these entities. The magician acts as a supernatural contractor, using secret names and symbols to force a spirit to do a job. The danger was immense. Summoning a chaotic entity was like handling a live wire. A mistake in the ritual, a misspoken word, could result in the entity turning on the summoner. The line between being the master of a demon and its victim was terrifyingly thin. This practice was a rejection of the public religion in favor of a secret, dangerous relationship with the unseen world. While a priest would stand in a bright temple, a magician would stand in a dark room, whispering the secret names of forgotten spirits, hoping to bend their ancient and terrible power to their own will. Section 6. The social and psychological power of dark magic. Why did people turn to these forbidden practices? The answer is rooted deep in human psychology and the structure of ancient societies. Dark magic was a weapon of the marginalized and an alternative system of justice. A primary driver was a desperate need for agency. For the poor, the enslaved, and those without social connections, life was precarious. If a powerful person wronged you, the legal system offered little hope. A curse tablet was an act of empowerment, the one tool a powerless person could use to strike back. Revenge was a powerful motivator, but it was also about a raw sense of justice. Many of the curse tablets found in Bath are explicitly framed as prayers for justice. The curse was often conditional. The thief would only suffer until the goods were returned to the goddess's temple. The curse functioned as a supernatural tool for recovering stolen property. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. Even for a skeptic, discovering a curse tablet bearing your name, pierced with a nail and buried in a grave, would be deeply unsettling. Belief in magic was widespread, and the fear it engendered was a potent force. A charioteer who believed he was cursed might become nervous and make a fatal mistake. A lawyer who found a binding spell against him might lose his confidence and stammer. The curse worked because people believed it would work. This led to a complicated legal response. Most societies condemned magic intended to harm another person. Maleficium. The earliest Roman laws included prohibitions against magically harming another's crops. However, prosecution was difficult. When a practitioner was found guilty, the punishments could be severe. The authorities took the threat of dark magic seriously, not just as a religious transgression, but as a threat to social order. The dark magic of the ancient world was not the stuff of fantasy epics. It was real, it was tangible, and it was deeply human. The lead tablets pulled from graves and springs are not props from a story. They are the final, furious testaments of real people. Their anger and desperation are etched into the metal, a permanent record of their desire to reach across the veil of reality and inflict their will upon an enemy. These practices were a response to a world without the securities we take for granted. They were a system of alternative justice, a tool for psychological warfare, and a way for the powerless to feel powerful. The rituals of binding, the whispers to the dead, and the summoning of spirits reveal a profound truth about human nature itself, our eternal struggle for control, our capacity for great love and obsessive hatred, and our unending fascination with the power that lies hidden in the darkness. The ancient world may be long gone, but the shadows it cast are still with us. The story has come to an end. If it left a powerful impression on you, please consider supporting the channel with a like and subscription. It's the best way to ensure more stories like this can continue to be told. Thank you.
The story has come to an end. If it left a powerful impression on you, please consider supporting the channel with a like and subscription. It's the best way to ensure more stories like this can continue to be told. Thank you.